The emperor rewarded him and married him to his sickly sister to have children with her. After he took it and told her Mesa, "It would be better if you go with me calmly. I haven't told anyone about yesterday yet." I looked at him nervously, and the scene changes at dinner while they were eating, and that's where Eric said to her, "Don't you need my help anymore?" But Mesa grabbed the fork and knife and didn't give him any reply. And at the same time, she says to herself, "I still don't like this man. Does it have to be very formal?" However, domestic servants are always incompetent. Although they know that I will eat with my hands, they always bring me a fork and knife. I haven't used one of these in nearly 10 years. It's been so long that I don't have the power in my hands. And here Eric said to her when he saw her eating with a fork and knife, "You're really good at this." And here Misa looked at him and she said to herself, "What do you mean by good? What a strange man." So she dropped the fork and practiced her childish habit and held the food with her hands. And here Eric looked at her in astonishment. He was shocked when he saw her eating food from her hands. He says, "What's up again this time?" At the time that Mesa started saying to herself, "If the maids came later and found the table clean, what are they going to think about? They're going to raise doubts and make things difficult, right?" Suddenly, she was shocked when she saw Eric blushed, but she didn't understand his facial expressions. And he tells her fair enough. "Please stop now." So Misa looked at him in amazement, and she says to herself, "Is he angry?" At the time, he got up and took his chair with him and sat next to her. And here, Mesa looked at him as she said, "It's not like this first time I've eaten like a beggar. Anyway, I think I'll have to act a little pampered." At the time that Eric took the towel while he was shy, and suddenly he grabbed her face as he said, "Look at a moment." Then he wiped her face as he said, "What should I do? Would it be good to clean and feed you as I always do?" And here Mesa said in herself, "Why does he behave this way?" And Eric, "Give me your hands." And she did it while he wiped her hands. She looked at him nervously, then blushed in shame. When they finished eating, the maids cleaned the table, and Eric was waiting outside the bathroom, where Mesa was taking her bath, but the maid Malika was torturing her and pouring cold water on her. And she says to her in anger, "How can you never catch a cold? I wish I could rest comfortably for a few days." And here Mesa said in herself, "That's what I hope for." So she thought a little and decided to do her childish actions and give her a lesson, and she grabbed her hair as she said to herself, "What's going on here? Usually, you leave the bathroom to the servants. Why are you here in person today?" And very angry. But what Mesa did to her angered her even more, and she dropped Mesa's head in the water. But Eric suddenly entered and was able to save Mesa while saying to the maid, "What are you doing?" And here, the maid was shocked. Then she looked at him, smiling and saying, "Oh my God, why are you here suddenly?" "Up to you." They called it a riot suddenly started, and sometimes she hurts herself when she's like this. I don't really know what to do. But Mesa was looking at her and she was saying to herself, "You're funny." And the maid said to Eric, "Anyway, would you mind going out for a while? I need to finish a shower, princess." But Eric stepped forward and said to her, "I'll do it myself." And the maid, "Excuse me." "Oh my God, Cam, this is embarrassing. How can you personally help with the shower and look at it? She's walking around trying to escape. There is no need to go through such problems." But Eric looked at her and said, "So it is more appropriate that I, her husband, do it." And here Misa looked at him in silence. The maid was saying, "It will not be easy for you to wash them yourself as soon as she washes her head. You need to massage her scalp and fingertips with the scented oil in this bottle. Then you need to wash her body and dry it thoroughly. Then there's the cream." And here Mesa said to herself, after hearing her words, "You're lying. Until now, you've been washing me with a bar of soap. What nonsense. Well, I guess, in the palace they washed me with lotion water, so I think it's true that I'm getting better treatment here." And here the maid said, "Permission, since you, sir, insist on doing it yourself, and Eric, yes, go and rest." And I went, and when I left, He was looking at her while saying to himself, "Now she's gone." And here in tension, he looked at Mesa and he says, "Maybe can you do it yourself?" But Mesa looked at him thinking and saying to herself, a crazy woman bathing by herself. So she refused and turned to the other side, saying to herself, "There's no way I can do that, is it?" And here Eric felt ashamed as he said, "Do you understand? So please wait a minute." And he went to get what he was going to use to bathe her. And here Mesa was looking at him and she was saying to herself, "Why are you angry again?" But he's not angry, he's just ashamed. But she went to him and she says to herself, "Continuing to provoke the man's nerves will not work. I need to cooperate as much as possible at the moment." And here Eric turned face to the other side in shame as he said, "Why are you doing this?" And here he looked at her in shock. When he found Mesa, she dropped the towel covered with it on the floor and became completely naked, saying to herself, "There's always a chance that this man could break this marriage and expose my secret to the royal palace. And most importantly, that." And here she was, giving him her back full of signs of torture. So when she turned and looked at him, she found him angry, and she said to herself, "When I first saw the man's huge build and scary, I decided not to go against his will if possible. And here I panicked and felt afraid from his scary looks at her, and she remembered her brother the king torturing her. So she looked at him nervously as she continued and said to herself, but I think I made a mistake. Although this guy is big and scary, except that he was still nice to me." But Eric at this moment was feeling angry after what he saw on her body of signs of torture, but she thought he was like her brother and she sat on the ground, scared and saying to herself, "After all, looks like I'm in trouble even here. I don't know why this man is so angry this time. But what is the point of knowledge? There must be a reason for that." But Eric gently touched her wounds, so Mesa was shocked. At the time that Eric said, "If the wounds are so deep that they leave scars from these, how strong is the blow? Who did this? Who by the right of the Creator did this to you?" And here she was stunned as she said to herself, "Is that sympathy for me?" This man's voice appeared as if he was suffering for some reason. When I heard his voice that appeared full with regret, something I've never heard of him before. So she replied to him and said, "The king is the one who did it." And at the same time, she says to herself, "I felt I had to respond, even if it was embarrassing." And here Eric looked at her in shock after learning that the king had done this to her. Then he looked at her sympathetically and put his hands on his face. And here Mesa said to herself, "This is very surprising." And suddenly Eric grabbed her as he said, "Let me wash you quickly. You may catch a cold, then put it in the bathtub." And here Mesa looked at him and she said to herself, "I thought he would be angry." At the time that Eric prepared himself to wash it and he says, "Please tell me if you're uncomfortable. It's the first time I've done this too." And here Mesa was looking at him and saying to herself, "This time he suddenly looked at me as if he was feeling extreme pity. Just you have to do it like washing the dog." And Eric started and washed her hair gently, so she felt kind and said, "You are very careful. I feel good." Eric started washing her hair gently as he said to himself, "Have you ever felt this bathroom?" And Mesa was feeling comfortable. And here Eric was ashamed, saying to her, "And then I'll clean your body too." And he did it. And here Mesa blushed for the first time, ashamed. Then she started laughing as she said, "It's tickling." And suddenly she turned to him and started looking at him. And she says to herself, "Usually, crazy women shouldn't worry about whether someone is wiping their genitals or not." And that's where Eric felt ashamed doing it. Then he told her, I am sorry." And at the same time, she blushed while saying to herself, "But the feelings that this man felt, it spread inside me like an infectious disease." And she turned her gaze away from him as she said to herself, "Now that I think about it, there was also something called shyness. For no reason, I felt strange." And when Eric was done, he fell on the bed, tired. And here Mesa looked at him and she said to herself, "It's very stressful." And here Eric grabbed it, and he says, "Now, Lie down and get some rest. You must be tired. And made her sleep next to him and kept looking at him, and she says to herself, I think you need rest, not me. And she kept looking at him in silence and remembered when he found out who she was and he was telling her, I thought I knew you, but I'm not. And here she said to herself, yesterday, he acted annoyingly without even knowing the grace of daring to save his life. And that's when she told the king that he touched her, and she continued and said, and today he looked at the scars again and took pity on me. Also, there are times when I eat a lot. And she got up and started looking at him and saying, and I end up not being able to hide my true colors and show some bad things. Are you completely exhausted? But on this level, I still think he's a rare good person. And here, I looked at him silently and then got up from the bed, and I left the room. And here Eric opened his eyes and got up when he heard her talking while she was in the bathroom and saying God. And that's where he went after her. And she is continuing and saying, that's very good, Edily. But when he opened the door, he found her looking at herself in the mirror while she was continuing and saying, can you go get me some headache medicine? He'll be in my room. Food poisoning is currently prevalent in the north of the capital. And here he looked at her in amazement at what she was saying. And Mesa is continuing and saying, the price of 5 doses of the drug has risen to 7 Jerry. And 2 Basil. And here Eric was watching her in silence, and Mesa is continuing and saying, how much medicine that you used? Take 1 shot. And here I noticed the presence of Eric, so she looked at him and she said, my dear, Mesa trains, no noise.